looks like a chance of showers, mostly cloudy and a high of 68. Today's the day to nominate the best of the Blackstone Valley.com. Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Why is California a UFO encrypted hotspot? Are there pudgy aliens? What paranormal adventures have been happening there lately?
Welcome to the 1016th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Coming to you from Woon AM/FM radio in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, on the Paranormal Radio app and TalkStream Live, and on YouTube. I'm Rick Eno, that was Ben, and Paul is with us too.
Everyone, I'm around here somewhere.
Yeah. And everyone except Ben is coming to you via Skype today.
Just one quick correction there, Rick. That's WOON.
Oh,
AM and FM. Yeah, they were. Hey, it's your first time with the call letters. Totally fine, but I would be remiss if I did not inform you. So on that note, we're happy to have Dev Rooney back with us via Skype today to discuss the latest paranormal news from the Golden State. And Dev Rooney has over 45 years of UFO research and independent investigative experience. She became interested in UFOs at an early age and has had many UFO sightings, some of which we will be talking about today. In January of 2008, she became a field investigator for MUFON, MUFON, and is now the Assistant State Director of Northern California MUFON. She has spoken at several chapter meetings, conferences, UFO-related radio shows, podcasts, and a couple of TV shows as well. She is the author of UFO Investigator, A Personal Look into Circumstances, Investigations, and Discovery.
Dev Rooney, welcome back to Behind the Paranormal.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Well, so, Deb, I guess we'll just hop right into it here. What's the latest paranormal news from your neck of the woods?
Well, we have, as far as the MUFON is concerned, we are still leading California with the most reported cases of 54 for September. And, my reaction to that when I look at these statistics every month is that California usually leads in the reports, and I think that's because of the huge amount of population here and because of the weather year-round. There are a lot of people outside, they're looking around, they're taking pictures, and so, they're seeing a lot of things as far as UFOs, UAPs. At one time, not too long ago, I was also the Regional 1 Director for the North American Dogman Project, and I oversaw 11 states in the West. And this is a group that was founded by Jody Cook, who resides in Ohio. And, there's been reports coming in to him all over the states and in other countries as well, of reports of a werewolf-looking creature referred to as Dogman. And here in California, here's the thing about Dogman. You're mostly hearing about sightings that happen in the Midwest, Michigan, Ohio, but it's really, this cryptid is actually being seen everywhere. Texas, Colorado, and also California. So that's the thing about California is that we have not only UFOs, but and Bigfoot. Bigfoot is big out here, as well as the Pacific Northwest, Oregon and Washington. But California, especially Northern California, there's been sightings of Bigfoot. I knew a researcher. He was a Bigfoot researcher out here, but he has left the state. But he had told me that while he was out, investigating a Bigfoot, he took a picture of a very black animal. And at first he didn't understand what he was seeing, but it resembled dog-like features. And he spoke with me about it, and I said, well, sounds like, based on his description, with a very long muzzle, these little pointy ears on top, and the very black fur. I said, well, and he shared the picture with me and told me where he saw it at, which was off of Highway 50. And I think he saw a dog man. But yeah, it was interesting because, he was out in the field, doing his research for Bigfoot, and then he comes across this creature. This creature has also been seen many times by other people. And when I was the Region 1 director for the NADP, we got a few reports, but here in California, a guy I talked to saw a dog man up in the Santa Cruz Mountains area. And there is also there, because I went, there's a Bigfoot center, a small center there, and I went, and it's kind of situated in that area. But this man talked about seeing this cryptid, this dog man, and he told me about its features. And I'm sorry, I got allergies.
Oh yeah, no, it's that time of year. It's same here.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's driving me nuts. But there was another lady that put in a report of a dog man, and she had moved out of state. And I spoke with her, and she said this. She started to hear about this cryptid, and said to herself, "That's what I had seen." And this probably happened about 20 years ago, up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. She lived up there, but she went to go visit a friend, and she had her young son with her, and they were leaving quite late to go home, and they were in that area of Santa Cruz. And she said that they were driving, and as they were going through some of the neighborhoods, there's a lot of people that live up there. It's very nice, very wooded. And as she was coming around a corner, and people had their garbage cans out, she saw something, she said, quite tall, with its head down into the garbage cans, rummaging around. And she started to slow down, because it was strange. She said it wasn't a person. And at first she thought it was a bear. And as they slowed down and her headlights were illuminating that area, it brought its head out, and it kind of stood up a little bit taller. And she was shocked at what she was seeing, because she said this thing had a dog face, clearly. And it startled her, basically because of the fact that she was expecting maybe a bear, but this was something totally different. And her son was like, Mom, what's that? And she was just staring at it, and it was looking at them, and she just stepped on the gas and left. She just wanted to get out of there. But it frightened her, and she didn't know what it was for many, many years. And as time was going on, we were, obviously there was more reports of people seeing a creature that resembled like a werewolf. That's what she said. It kind of looked like that, and it scared her. But then she started hearing that people were calling it a dog man. So she went out and researched it and found the NADP and then reported it to them, which in turn came to me because of the fact that it happened here in California, and that was one of the states that I oversee. So I got to speak with her about that. So yeah, this thing is really, and we have here in California, we've had many sightings over a lot of years in the past, even in Sacramento, in the Sacramento area, where I live pretty close to now. But I spoke to another woman that joined my MUFON, local MUFON group, and she was saying that, well, she lives up in the Forest Hill area, and she was just saying that she has a lot of UFO sightings, a lot of paranormal activity going on with her. And we spoke at length about, at first she didn't realize that a lot of paranormal activity kind of go hand in hand with UFO sightings. And her son have had sightings and missing time, is what she is saying, over the years. And for her, she says that she had noticed that whenever she'd have like visitors, she notices an odor, and like when her skin has a smell after she's been in a tanning bed. I felt that was very interesting, because I hadn't heard that before. And so she was just saying that her and her son have experienced many missing time episodes. And she's met reptilians and grays and mantids. And she said that she's also seen beings that look like twinkling lights. I find that fascinating. And she says she has mostly astral encounters, but has had physical encounters as well. And she feels that these beings provide energetic healing. So I really like hearing this kind of stuff because, you always hear people talking about, yeah, they see grays and the reptilians and, the praying mantis types. But when people start to talk about other types of beings, I always find that really fascinating. And that's what really gets me excited about UFO sightings, is when people see unusual shaped UFOs as well. That kind of thing interests me. And that's why in my book I had broken down the chapters, because I profiled 30 close encounter cases in my book. And so I'm fascinated with the different shaped UFOs. And I broke those down, those chapters 3 through 6, into the different shapes, like the triangles, the rectangles, the disc-shaped objects. And then there's a chapter of other type shaped objects that we're seeing. So listening to different people and the different experiences they've had with different kind of beings that are seen, or additional information, like when she talked about the odor after she felt that they were there visiting or coming for her or whatever. There's this odor, and she at first she couldn't pinpoint like what that smell was, and then it reminded her of how her skin smelled after being in a tanning bed. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yes, indeed. Regarding the upright canine cryptids, as we call them, has the term skinwalker ever crossed your mind? Because that's on a lot of people's minds because of Skinwalker Ranch and the coverage. Has that come up?
Well, because that's a Native American term, and I think that Skinwalker, I think in their folklore, as far as the history for Skinwalker, that it was a man shaping into this creature. And so that is probably something a little different, because the people that were out here, nobody really brings up that term skinwalker. Like when they talk about what they see, they don't give it a name as much as they will just talk about the description. And so it'll vary in, like, a lot of times it'll be black fur, sometimes it'll be brown, or there'll be a gray, and it may be a combination. But they always talk about the face and being canine, with a very long muzzle. And that's what really gives them that impression that it's dog-like. And if it's showing its teeth, or growling in any way, then it becomes more of a werewolf. And here's the thing: if people are interested in watching horror movies, there are movies that are out there that depict these dogman or werewolf creatures. Obviously, Van Helsing, and there's Dog Soldiers.
Dog Soldiers, good movie.
Yeah, there's all these Hollywood movies that depict these werewolf creatures. And if the witnesses that see these creatures, if they have seen those kind of movies, they'll reference that. But there are times where, like that one lady, she didn't bring up anything like that. And when she did see this creature at pretty close range, she didn't know what she was looking at. She was only talking about a description. And then she said, after the years were going by and she started to started to research, and then saw other people referring it as Dogman. So that's the difference, I think. And so Skinwalker Ranch, I do watch that program and everything, and read the books and everything. But that they do see this Dogman creature.
Deb, in all instances, or has it been in different cases, when they're describing the appearance of the Dogman, is it always pretty much the same? The snout, the black hair, the height, the weight? I mean, is there variability between them, or no, they're definitely like this?
Well, yes, there's different types. If people go up on the website, North American Dogman Project, Jody has up there information, a lot of information about reports that have come in, and he also has the different types that have been seen. And but I can only speak of what the witnesses that I have spoken to. One of my first cases that I spoke to the witness, he was on vacation, and he lives up in Washington State, and he was coming back through California and up towards Oregon when he decided to go to the Jedediah. There is a park up there where he ended up stopping because he wanted to take pictures of that area because he was a big Star Wars fan. And so it was the Jedediah Smith Redwoods State Park. And so this happened in 2017. And he ended up stopping and he parking, and he said there was a couple cars there, and it was probably around 5 p.m. and it was still light out, but he said he went in, and his whole purpose was to go in and take pictures of the Ewok scene from the Star Wars movie. And so he's walking along the path, And he did pass a couple of guys that were walking around. And then he came around and he said he started to hear like these roaring sounds, like two wolves fighting. It was just really deep and magnified, and it scared him. He was like, what the heck is that? And his the hair on his arms and the neck stood up. It really frightened him because it was loud. And so he's looking around, and he ends up kind of like deciding to leave. And he ends up seeing this dark figure standing still in the forested area. You know, there's a lot of trees out there. And he saw this black figure, and it was all black, about 7 feet tall, and it was an animal, but it was standing on hind legs. And he said it was between 250 and 400 pounds, and it looked like a bodybuilder. This thing, just the chest was massive, and there was a branch that kind of covered its face, a portion of its face, but he was able to see that it had pointy ears with some tufts on them, and a very long muzzle, and really long arms, and the waist seemed to be smaller. It wasn't like a Bigfoot or a bear where it was just kind of like stocky. Yeah. This thing, its massive chest, and then it had like a waist. Okay. And a lot of people talk about that. And then of course, massive legs, but he ended up, he said it looked just like a werewolf. He didn't call it a dog man. He didn't call it anything other than it looked like a werewolf to him. And so after about 25 seconds at looking at it, and he said he was about 30 yards away from it. So he ended up taking a picture with his cell phone, and then he started to walk away, and then he took a second picture of it. And it was just standing there staring at him. And so then he kind of was just looking around, and he ended up getting back to the car. And the cars that were parked there when he arrived were still there. So there are still people out in that park somewhere. But he said, when I questioned him, I said, well, do you think you're looking at a black bear? And he goes, oh, no. Mm-mm. He said, I saw that face. That is a dog face. That's not a bear. That was not a bear. It wasn't built like a bear. It was huge. It was massive. He said it looked like a werewolf. He said it didn't look like a bear or anything. And he goes, it scared the hell out of him. He said, I just wanted to get out of there. So I did, I ended up getting the original photographs from him, and I did some checking on the metadata, and everything was intact. These pictures were not manipulated at all. It talked about, because in the metadata you could see the date, the time, the phone that was used, as far as the camera, everything, all of the data was intact. So I knew that he didn't manipulate these at all. And so those pictures are all over the internet now. You know, a lot of people who have their own YouTube channels have grabbed it and talk about it and everything.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's really interesting only for a lot of reasons. But one of the things that I find really fascinating is that, you know, you can see through a lot of, you know, not even just European cultures, this idea of werewolves, right? I think the term, you know, it can turn people off because it just, you know, has a lot of baggage with it, right? Because it makes you think like, oh, Hollywood movies, whatever, and it kind of, you know, isn't I don't know if we have the right terms to be able to describe it. I mean, in your opinion, what do you think these things are? Do you think they're actually werewolves, some sort of cryptid? Do you think they're people that are actually, lycanthropes? What's your opinion, Dev?
Well, based on the research that I've done, because originally, back in 2017, and I think I joined the NADP in 2018. But prior to that, I'm not a fan of horror films and all that. I don't really watch that stuff. I never watched any werewolf movies except for like back in the day when the 50s, back in the 50s, they put out the werewolf and the mummy and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so as a kid, I watched that stuff. I always thought it was Hollywood. I always thought werewolves were a thing that Hollywood made up. I didn't know that something like that existed. And when I started to, some of these paranormal programs were featuring not only UFOs, because I watch a lot of the UFO programs, and I started to notice that there were cases where these dogmen and Bigfoot were being seen with UFOs. And I found that fascinating. I said, wow, what is this? And then I started to do research, and that's when I met Jody. And he had asked me if I wanted to join the organization and be a Regional 1 director for the West. And I had agreed. And so him and I had many, many hours of speaking on the phone about what this is, what his research was, what I found out, because he knew I was with MUFON and I, had a lot of experience in doing UFO research and investigations. So we talked about what this creature could be. And, he brought up the fact that Egyptians have a god, Anubis, that looks like the dog man, right? It's a dog face. It's all that. And there have been reports of people have seen this dog man creature in a uniform type thing. And so Jody and I were talking about the fact that the Egyptians, had this god that looked like one. But, it's always, is it flesh and blood? Is it, what is it? Yes, there's been people who have shot at them and doesn't seem to really do anything if you have a gun. That's why a lot of hunters that go out into the field and come across these things, there's been reports of these people who have been armed to the teeth, shooting at these things, nothing happens, and they are terrified to go back out into the field to be and hunt again. So with reports of them being seen in conjunction with UFOs, and the fact that there have been reports of people seeing these things and then they'll step behind bushes or whatever, and then they seem to just disappear. So are they, same thing that with Bigfoot, are these things just going into a portal and disappearing? There's that possibility. So I don't know what they are. There's just so many reports of the fact that yes, they're flesh and blood. They're actual beings and very smart. Their hands. They actually have hands. They don't have paws like a dog. They actually can open car doors. They can open doors. So like a raccoon will have the ability to actually, so some people are saying they have like raccoon hands, but then they have like these 3-inch claws at the end. So it's very terrifying. I think if you were to come across something like that 7 feet tall with massive teeth, a massive chest, you have guns and you shoot at them and that's not going to do anything. I think that's pretty scary.
Has it ever hurt anyone?
Yes, there's been reports that people are saying that they have been hurt, or and then there's reports that people have been killed by them, but I don't know how true that is. You know, you read and research stuff, and I mean, unless you're actually speaking to real witnesses and stuff, a lot of it is just testimony. Okay. And that's why here at MUFON, we speak with the witness, and I've gone out countless times on live investigations where I'm with the witness, we're standing exactly where they saw what they saw. And so when you're looking at someone's face and you're watching their body language and you're listening to their testimony, at the end of the day, that's what we have. We have testimony. So unless you're with that person, and there's 1,000,001 videos, photographs of cryptids, of everything out there, and people are ooh and ahhing about, oh, that's a great video of a UFO or whatever. But unless you're interviewing the actual witness, the actual and looking at the actual footage and seeing if it's been manipulated or what, I mean, that's all you have, testimony.
And speaking of testimony, it is time for our break. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno and Rick Eno. How many Enos does it take to do a radio show? Well, I guess we will find out. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. This is Linda Tebow for Aging Well in Woonsocket, inviting you all to a fun and special way to help us with our work at the Gaston Ayard Junior Senior Center. Join us for dinner and laughter as the famous Charlie Hall presents his hilarious look at aging well called Aging Disgracefully. What's more, Aging Disgracefully is at 4:30 in the afternoon on a Friday, October 20th. No nighttime driving. Seating at the Senior Center Hall on Social Street is limited, so get your tickets today. Thanks to the generous financial support of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Rhode Island, the tickets are only $30 for an afternoon of salad, dynamites, dessert, friends, and laughter you will never forget. Aging Disgracefully supports the health and wellness programs of Aging Well, Inc.
Local and live at 99.5 FM.
Hello, and welcome back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, coming to you from WOON AM and FM radio here on the corner of Park Avenue and Kennedy Street in Rhode Island's beautiful Blackstone River Valley here in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. And we have Dev Rooney on with us, and we're talking about some unexpected subjects, and honestly, they're very fascinating. We're talking about the cryptid Dogman, otherwise known as werewolves or canine cryptids, upright canine cryptids specifically. And you brought up a really interesting point, Dev, and it brought up Anubis, but there's a lot of other portions of other mythologies that also bring up werewolves as well. Oddly enough, one of the really early Christian saints, Saint Christopher, is depicted as having a dog head. And there, a lot of people will push that aside, say, oh, well, it's just, misinterpreted Latin or whatever, because they would, the Latin word for canine was canis, right? So Canaanites, therefore dog people. But interestingly enough, in the Eastern Church, there's a very different understanding of it. They talk about the idea of the monstrous being on the outskirts of society, right? Because the idea is that society is made up of concentric circles, right? So in the center and moving outwards, and on the outskirts is where you have all the monstrous things. It's why demons existed in deserts, and monsters and ghosts and stuff were in all these like deserted places because they were on the outside of society. And we still kind of see that today, right? With the paranormal being on the outside of society. It's these things that are kind of on the outskirts of our understanding, in a sense, rather than a sort of metaphysical location. It's kind of like on the outside of our peripherals in a way, right? And there's a lot of other really interesting things too, like I don't know if you've ever heard the tale of King Lycan, or Lycaon, depending on how you pronounce it, but he was sort of considered the first werewolf in Greek mythology. There was this idea that the ancient Greeks had where if you consumed a human heart, it was kind of like a performance enhancing drug. So it was sort of the same idea, except he did it with, in a very graphic way. We're not going to go into it because this is commercial radio. But essentially, he gained the powers of a wolf, right? Became animal-like. And there was this idea of, you do animal things, you become animal-like. And it was, like is to like. Very basic Greek philosophy, right? Dirt's attracted to dirt because it's the same thing, not because of gravity. Same difference, right? So there are all these ideas that have existed throughout many different civilizations of this idea or creature that exists on the peripherals that has these qualities that are vaguely human, but they're monstrous. And you can make the same argument for Bigfoot and pretty much anything else in the paranormal. You see, I'm trying to tie this all in here so we can shift subjects. When it comes to, ufology, right? You mentioned earlier in the show, and I thought this was a really interesting observation because we're starting to see it as well, that a lot of these phenomena sort of dovetail together. So where you have, extraterrestrials or UFOs or any sort of that kind of high strangeness, you find that there's also other things going on, whether it's, Bigfoot, dogmen, poltergeists, etc. Have you found that as time has gone on, that this is becoming more of a regular occurrence? Or has this always been the case and we just haven't really paid attention to it?
Yeah, that's a good question because, when I get people putting in reports that are historical, and I always ask this same question: why are you reporting this now? And a lot of times they'll say, well, I didn't know I could report it anywhere. And then they watched a UFO program, and then they realized, they're speaking about MUFON and that they could report it. So I think these things, if everybody in the world isn't seeing these things, right? Like I've never seen a dogman, I've never seen a Bigfoot, but then again, I don't spend in woods or wherever they would be seen. I wouldn't know about it. I wouldn't see these things, right? So they're coming in, if they're existing here or they're not, and they're coming through portals, or they're coming in UFOs, let's say. And there are a lot of different entities, I believe, that exist, and we're not seeing a lot of them. But if they've always been here or always had the ability to come here, and people have seen these things and they didn't know that they could report something like that, we're not going to hear about it. Because that's the first thing that everybody will ask me when they report a UFO to us. And I take their case and I talk with them, is that's the first thing they want to know. Did anybody else see this? So, and then of course, all we can do is research to see if something was seen in that area on that date and time. So if you don't report it, we're not going to know about it. Same thing with these cryptids. If you don't report it, no one's going to know about it. And is everybody seeing these things? No. So that's the short answer as far as we're not all seeing everything, and we're not all reporting it, so we don't know of it. Now, I wanted to make a comment that as far as California is concerned, as far as the different cryptids, there was a sighting that not too long ago, probably a couple years ago, where someone went up to, I think it's the Calusa Casino, and they were coming out and getting ready to leave, and they saw a pterodactyl flying in the sky. I thought that was interesting because, how many times do you hear about that happening? You don't. Now, I don't know if is that because no one is reporting what they see? Like they'll say, well, I don't know, I didn't want to report it. I don't want anyone to think I'm crazy. There's a lot of reasons why people don't report things. So how many times are people seeing those kind of things? Also down in the Fresno area, you have those, the Fresno crawler, very weird looking cryptid. I'm fascinated by that. So you're hearing about reports only because someone has either told somebody and it got reported, or, again, to answer your question, I don't know, like if people are not going to report things, or it's not going to be written down as a historical document in some way, whether it's reported through, because now we have the internet, because prior to the internet, where did you put your reports at? Right?
That's a good
now,
point.
when I had a sighting of 2 UFOs during the day at close range, I mean, I felt they were pretty close. There were 2 of them flying over my head in 1978 here in California in broad daylight. It was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I stood there watching these things fly right over my head, these silver discs. And at that time, 1978, I was part of the APRO, the APRO group. I would get in their newsletter. Well, I wrote to them and said, I'd like to report a UFO sighting. Well, they sent me in the mail their report form because there was no internet. So I was able to report an early sighting only because I went out of my way. I knew of a place I could report it. I didn't know of MUFON back in those days. I knew of APRO.
Right.
The Aerial Phenomena Research Organization out of Arizona. So again, if you're not going to report it, if people see what they see, depends how many people are seeing things, how many people are reporting them. So there's the answer to that.
That makes sense. We're kind of burning through the show here, Dev. So take a second. Tell us about your book, where people can find out more about you, maybe a little bit about MUFON, whatever you want to talk about. This is your time.
Yeah, so I'm the author of UFO Investigator, A Personal Look into Circumstance, Investigations and Discovery. That book is about me and my experiences, and how I believe that my experiences have led me to become a UFO investigator. I have been interested in UFOs my entire life, meaning since I was a kid, really started to get into it deeply in the 70s. And the book is available on Amazon, and I actually have I run a Rockland MUFON group that we meet every second Saturday of the month in Roseville, California. And I do bring my books there, where I sell them, and I, sign for anyone that would like that. The book is also available on Amazon, and it's under my name, Dev Rooney, Rugne. I like the book because, here's the thing. When you're writing a book, it took me a while to try to figure out how I wanted it laid out. How did I want to present this information? And I knew I wanted to include cases of mine. And so I chose 30 close encounter cases to profile. And like I said, chapters 3 through 6, actually, I broke them down into the different shaped UFOs. And, some of these cases, I'll never forget them, because when you're speaking with people, and I'm an experiencer, I've been taken, and in fact, I just noticed, and I can still see it, I have this really deep bruise on my belly, and I have no idea how it got there. And I was talking to a friend that's kind of psychic, and she was saying, oh yeah, you were taken a few nights ago. I said, oh boy. And, here's the thing. I don't remember things consciously, and I think because it does frighten me because I don't know. I guess I just don't really want to know what was happening. And I know that must sound strange to people that know that I'm a UFO investigator, because I sit there and I spend all my time talking to others who have had experiences or sightings. And I'm fascinated to hear what they have to say, because I'm in the same boat, like I understand them. And so some of these cases that are in this book are near and dear to my heart, because speaking to a couple of these guys and what they saw and how it impacted their life just blows me away, because I feel bad that something so traumatic has happened that in one case, one of the guys, you know, him and his family spent a lot of time up in the Yosemite Valley camping, going hunting. He says he was always hunting up there, always going up in this one area. And when years ago, when him and his pregnant wife went up there to just escape the heat of the valley, and decided to camp up there, and then that night, an object came down, and it was huge. And to protect, he was got into protective mode, because his wife was like 7 months pregnant, and she was getting frightened. And he said, let's get in the car and let's just get out of here. And they left all their stuff, and this thing started chasing them. He said it was big as a house, and his description of the craft was very interesting. And so I hired a digital artist to bring it to life. I got as much detail. I had him draw what he could to describe everything on it, because at that close range, you're going to have so much detail, right? And so I hired this digital artist to bring that thing to life. And so the book has these color photos. I wanted everything to be colored to make these UFOs pop, because there are colors, and I'm a very visual person, so I wanted to make sure that the book was not done in black and white, and I wanted as many drawings and images as possible. And every image of a UFO that's in there is from the witness. Either they have given me a drawing themselves, or provided enough information that I felt satisfied with having that drawing represent what they saw. But this guy and his wife got chased by this UFO, and they were terrified. And long story short, because it's all in the book, but it changed his life so dramatically that they got a divorce. He stopped working. He never went back up there ever again. He said, this is a place that his family would always go. I didn't want to go back. He always went hunting up that way. Nope. He never wanted to go back. And it changed his life for the worst, in my opinion, and of course his. But listening to the emotion-filled testimony of his, it touched me, and I always just felt so bad that something like that occurs to anyone. Just the fear level, it's horrible.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's something that shatters your worldview, and I think that that's really important, because there's oftentimes as someone who's been in the field since I was a teenager, right? It's like there's this idea that we kind of negate the personal experience and just focus on the phenomena, right? It's like you focus on the things that happened, and it's like, okay, well, they saw this, bop 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 bop, but who cares what happens to them afterwards? It's like, okay, cool, yeah, they saw this, there was this creature that appeared, but what happened to them, right? How were their lives affected? Sometimes it's really positive, right? Sometimes they change their lives, they get better. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but there was one gentleman who had an experience with Mothman, and he ended up becoming like like a whiz at math, art, like changed his life. But like you hear these other experiences, and they're very traumatic. It's scary, and it's so important to focus on the person experiencing it, because that's where we get the story from, right? They're the subject that's experiencing the object in this, and it's so important that we pay attention to the subject, not just the object.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was going to say that a lot of times with trauma in general, and particularly in this genre where we here accept the trauma of an experience or someone who's been abducted, but in the general world, I don't think it's completely accepted. And something to really focus on is that individual who's suffering the trauma. That trauma doesn't just stay with that individual. It can become generational. If they have children, family members, everyone gets affected with this, and it goes forward. It's not unlike any other trauma in the battlefield or car accident or something horrible happening. It goes on. The hard part is for these people is, where do they turn to? I mean, I know MUFON's an organization that can hook them up with people that can help them, but in general, if you experience something and you're not in this sort of ball game that we play, and you're not going to know what the heck to do. You're going to be alone, and that trauma can turn into drug use, drinking, abuse, horrible situations, and that often gets forgotten. These people have literally, some of them, like you said, Ben, it's a great experience. The majority I've heard, they're not so great. That's that. Unfortunately, they're kind of horrifying. So something we don't often think about.
Yeah. And that's why I when I talk to these people, and I always, when I'm listening, and I, let them know that they can, call me, contact me, if they want to talk some more. If they've seen anything else, they wanted to chat with me about it. I always try to, be there. And it's important too, because I can relate. And even though I don't remember a lot of the conscious stuff that goes on with me, I have realized that I have become I'm very psychic. Especially if I pay attention to those thoughts that are popping into my head, I get answers to things. But I always do try to be there for the people, to chat with, because a lot of times they thank me. They thank me for listening to them, because a lot of times in the past they said, when they did bring up their experiences to others, they did get laughed at, or they, no one believed them or whatever. And so I always try to, listen to them and pay attention to the human that went through this,
Sure.
Sometimes all it takes is just listening, and so most people don't do that. Just give a lot of unsolicited advice or just don't care. And so it's listening is an incredibly important skill that not a lot of people have. But we're coming down to the end of the show here, Dev. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for this really fascinating show, and did not go in the direction I expected it to go, but I'm okay with it.
I liked it.
Yeah, so I guess we'll hop into our announcements here as we come down to the end of the hour. The 2023 Western Connecticut UFO Conference is coming up, and that's presented by the Danbury Library, and that will take place virtually and in person. That's from October 22nd to October 29th. Events will begin here on this show on October 22nd in a few short weeks with special guest Reverend Michael Carter of Ancient Aliens and live audience interaction, and there's more information to come on that.
And the Greater New England UFO Bigfoot Conference is back. This will be a one-day event on November 19th at the Veterans Memorial Center in Leominster, Mass. Watch for more information. Also, visit the show website, behindtheparanormal.com, where you can find nearly 1,200 hours of regular shows and special broadcasts since 2008 from CBS Radio, Achieve Radio, and here on WOON AM and FM.
Good job.
Also,
Right.
For you, Ben. Also, hear many of these broadcasts on the major podcast platforms, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
And don't forget about our show app. It is free. It's rather bare bones, but you know what? It's at BehindTheParanormal.com, and while you're there, you can browse our books, along with those of our guest co-hosts. Our show website also has a charity page with links to several good causes that we have adopted over the years, including Hope for Hilldale Cemetery in Haverhill, Massachusetts, run by our good friend Tom Spitaleri, USA Cares, Canadian Veterans Advocacy, Helping Haiti's Orphans, and the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America, as well as the Sisterhood of Ground Zero. And before I forget, Dev, where can people find your book?
At Amazon.com, and also I just want to put out our local website, NorthernCaliforniaMUFON.com.
Mm-hmm.
The information is on there and a link to the book as well.
Lovely.
Okay. So what's going on next week, Rick?
On October 8th, Paul and Ben will welcome back the legendary Kevin Randall, UFO researcher, veteran of both the U.S. Army and Air Force, to lead us down the weird path of the 1952 UFO outbreak over Washington, D.C. I'm going to be listening to that one.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a real barn burner, maybe, but we'll find. I'm sure it will be. So we leave you today with an old Indian saying, "All the flowers of all the tomorrows are in the seeds of today." I'm Ben Eno.
I'm Paul Eno.
And I'm Rick Eno. Thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Paranormal.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. You can't vote for them if they're not on the ballot. Nominate today at bestoftheblackstonevalley.com. Broadcasting live and local daily from the Navigant Credit Union broadcast studio at the corner of Park Avenue and Kennedy Street in Woonsocket. This is ON AM and FM.
WO